loads. Okay, what is user load? User load refers to the cognitive and emotional demands placed on user when interacting with digital product. It encompasses factors such as complexity, speed, consistency, as well as users' expectation and mental workload. Okay, somebody was mentioning in chat for some of the question, like they use word like cognitive load. So this is what it is called actually. You can say cognitive load, user load. So when user interact with your app or website, they are basically dealing with this cognitive and emotional demand placed on them. If, let's say, a process is too complex, or slow, or inconsistent, user can directly abandon the task or flow or whatever it is, right? If you observe yourself, you can also, if you find, let's say, if I tell you to use a tally software and you have no idea, or if I tell you to use, let's say, uh, Adobe Maya software, let's say, or 3ds Max, right? If you had to just fiddle around with it, you would find it more complex, right? If I tell you to use government website for that matter, you would try to click on some button, but it will take time, it would be slow, right? It will, again, you might not want to go through that particular experience. So what is actually happening, your mind is always endlessly thinking about whatever is it is there on the screen in a way. Okay, and if your website or app is more complex, then again it will induce more questions in users mind. Why it is happening, why is like this, what happens when I click over there, what happens when I do this thing, I want to do something, where can I find out, and all of this thing. If there is a complexity, and if the response time is very also slow, again lot of more question. Okay, why it is not happening, is my internet is on, or my internet is slow, or on the server side is the problem, or maybe government website is it's not working, or whatever it is. Like, it induces a lot of question, lot of emotional demands are also there, right? We feel, array, this is confusing, we feels like, oh, this is very slow and lazy. And if the website is inconsistent, like when you, it is more on the Jacob's law, if you are habitual to do certain work in a certain manner, but it is not your app is actually not consistent with that, then again the mental workload will increase. And that is when we say the cognitive load has increased. The cognitive and the emotional combines as a user load has increase. So that is what it is called as user load. Okay. So for example, let's say, let me give you another example. Is like, let's say if you are designing a Uber app. Okay. So, or any particular app, let's not only Uber app or something. Your main focus should be, when you are actually on the UI, your main focus should be how you can declutter the screen. Okay. Declutter the options in a way. Like when you are decluttering this thing, that is when you are actually reducing the visual load. Okay, there are a lot of options on the screen, there are a lot of animations or UI stuff on the screen, that is actually increasing the visual load, right? So you have to always think your visual load has to be minimal. There has to be, even if you are drawing a single line, there has to be reason to draw that particular line. Okay, the next thing is your workflow. You should be minimizing the excessive clicks. When you are adding more clicks, let's say to go through a particular process, you are actually adding motor load. Like user has to do a lot of movement in a way. User has to click on next. User has to click somewhere on the top side of the screen. In the next screen, they have to click on somewhere bottom of the screen, left side, right side. If you are adding this particularly, if it is not consistent, also it increases the motor load. Okay, so you have to think how to minimize that. And if the navigation is confusing, or if whatever the content you are writing, the UX copy is not right, or if it is confusing, or it is using some technical jargons, then it increases the cognitive load, right? There will be confusion in navigation, confusion in understanding what it is saying in a way. what the screen is communicating and all of those things. So visual load, motor load, and cognitive load, you have to decrease. You have to think about decreasing all of this thing when you are designing any particular app. So always use minimalistic visual design. Let me see. Yeah. Oh, I think this thing is over here itself. So you have to minimize the visual load, motor load, and cognitive load, as I said. Okay. Huh. How to reduce the user load actually is like when you have to reduce the visual load, you have to think about using minimalistic visual design. Okay. Like the Apple does, right? All of their website or application, you'll see there will be minimal visual load. There is nothing unnecessary on the screen, or some illustration is just there for there. You might not find it Apple using in such a particular manner. Then consistent layouts. Your layouts has to be consistent. Bold hierarchy. Hierarchy is like you have the power to guide users' eyes, right? So use a good hierarchy, I would say. High contrast so that everything is legible, and use generous white space. Whenever you have a white space, whatever the content you are showing, that gets highlighted when there is a generous white space around it. Okay. I usually call the term as a breathing space. When you have a breathing space around anything, it becomes easier to read. What you can do to reduce the motor load? Minimal hover interaction. Let's say if you're on your website, everything is on hover, then only user would understand. It will increase the motor load. Large touch targets. If you have a tiny touch target, minimal touch sizes should be. Read the material design guidelines, read the human interface guidelines. If in an interview, if you give such answers, 28, no. If you say 40, no. It would be a disaster. They would understand you haven't gone through the guidelines. For iOS, it is 44. For Android, is it 48? This is as per their guidelines. The minimal tappable size. Let's say if you are creating some option, how much is the minimal tappable area that you will give? Let's say you are creating a button, okay? What should be the tappable area for button? Visually, it can be reduced, but dimension wise, like from the developer side, at least it has to give the 44 pixels. And you should not keep any particular element in between those. Like it should not come in like a clickable area of one icon, let's say, should not coincide with the clickable area of other icon, I would say. Are you getting it, Muskan? Or I can show it on Figma also. Say if I'm creating a button, okay, I need to ensure it has to be 48 pixel by at least height may. Minimum size is 48. So minimal height may is 48. Now if I want to keep it like 33 and this width has to be increase in width and all, that is okay. But I cannot go less than this in a way, less than 48 for Android. So on the safer side, what I usually do, I use 48 or I use 50, if whether it is iOS or whether it is Android. But you always have to think about the real estate when you are using 50 or you are using it the higher value, you are actually getting uh, some real estate from other element in a way, right? So always use 48 pixel size for your button. Okay, so let's say this will be your button. Text size 14 is minimum for the body text. For caption, you can go for 12. But if you are using anything less than 12, that will involve an accessibility button. Yeah, I'll tell you about the radio button, how radio buttons are created in a way. Okay. So in iOS, so you will find 44 by 44 ka radio button like this. And then you have some certain circle like this, let's say. Okay. For example, this will be in iOS. So the overall size, if you see, it would be 48 in a way, 44, sorry. Okay. In Android, it is like this. Okay. In Android, it is like this. But let's say if you are having this smaller also, but till developer will give you the 44 by 44 pixel. Like you have to mention that the clickability of this area has to be this much. Once you click one time, it will be on. One click again, it will be off. Getting me? In iOS, you might have noticed there are the uh, what they call it, segmented controls in a way. Like they looks like this. Like you have this looks something like this, and there will be some text like this tab one. This basically tabs, but in Android it is called segment control. So these are the segments they call it. In Android, you would find it using it as a tab. Okay, so you will find this would be around 34 or it is around 36 or something. Okay, but if you go inside the code and if you find what is the actual tappable height they have given, it is always like this. It would be 44 by 44. So this is the minimal tappable area. So this ensures that user will not have a fat finger problem. Like they are going to tap on tab or something, and let's say if you have certain, let's say this button is just over here, like just next to this in a way, without, or let's say you're adding 1 pixel gap or something. If you're clicking on tab 2 or something, there are chances that the button might get clicked. So that's why you need to ensure that there is always a breathing space. You can keep more spacing, but it should be 44 by 40. Let's say, for example, if you're using some icon, adding icon, let me just check. For example, let me know why should I need, okay. Okay. So for example, let's say on the title bar, I'm going to use this icon. Okay. Now over here, it will say, it is saying 45 or something. But what you should usually do, create a rectangle of 44 by 44, create a frame of 44 by 44. Okay. Add your icon inside that. Then let's say you have different icons. Okay. And when you make this as a component set, now you should use it properly, as in let's say yeah icon use किया यहाँ पे ये icon, this icon and this icon. Now they are same, but imagine if they are different. Okay, if you provide no spacing between them, that is also okay because you are already provided the sufficient padding and all of those things. Okay, so if you, let's say, let me give some background color to this so that you would understand. Okay, now, if you keep them close, let's say if you want to have certain elements and you have a tight spacing, you can do this. Okay. This is still, as per the guidelines, it is clickable in a way. But you should not do this in a way, I would say, like this, because there is very tight space and you are compromising on their 44 by 44, the minimal tappable thing. Then what would happen? Let's say if you are going to click this middle icon, this might get clicked in a way. Is that mean if we made a button or something, we have to give at least 44 pixel to put the another clickable thing? Sorry, Muskan, can you talk and explain what you're trying to say? Cool. So 44 pixel is the minimal tappable area, Praveen, for iOS. For Android, it is 48. At least iOS and Android, we should remember. So larger touch targets, resting spots for fingers. Resting spots as in like if everything is clickable on your screen, there is no and you have a scroll basically to do, and there is no place to rest your finger itself, then also there is a motor load in a way. Like there will be some accidental clicks, and then user has to go back and come again and all of those things, right? So always have a generous white space that is works as your resting spots. Yeah, use shortcuts. Like imagine Figma, they might, if they remove all the shortcuts and all, we'll have to go every time in some option and select and all of those things. It will it will increase the motor load on us. Next one is reduce cognitive load. How you can reduce the cognitive load? Simplify workflow. The more simplified your process is, the more short and sweet your process is. It is going to get good results also. User going to love it because they will have a less cognitive load. And now you know where to use the cognitive load word. Okay, you cannot use it anywhere for anything. Let's say minimal visual because cognitive load ज़्यादा है. It's not like that. You have to use the cognitive load, this wording at a certain space, certain places only. Providing wizards and shortcuts, again, this will reduce the cognitive load. Clear information architecture. If your user is getting lost in the flow in your website, that will increase the cognitive load. Imagine कभी कभी लगता है अरे आप बैक कैसे जाऊं, right? Or how can I navigate to some other pages and all of those things. That is like because because of your information architecture is not clear, it increases the motor load as well as the cognitive load.